Rhodes Airport. Let's get up and out of here. It is a beautiful spot for an airport, although terrifyingly close to the sea, but we landed okay, so let's hope we get out okay too. We're heading for Turkey, which is actually very close, only about 11 miles away. We're a lot closer to Turkey than we are to the rest of Greece and to Athens. My doctor friend Alexander said I shouldn't be flying today. I've been ill. He said I'd be reckless to take off and press on, but if I'm going to find Abdul in Aleppo and get these rings to him, then I really think I do need to press on. So let's go. And we are up. It's a beautiful spot for an airport. I'm a bit worried about flying for too long over the sea in this condition, so my plan is to head for the coast as directly as possible. This will take us to Marmaris, then for ease of navigation we'll head across to Antalya, then cut inland to Konya. That'll be enough for today. I think this is going to be a difficult flight, but I've got to go for it. I can't sit around any longer feeling sorry for myself. Of course, I wouldn't describe the flight like that if I was speaking to a cabin full of passengers. I'd probably try to sound a little bit more confident. I think passengers appreciate a little bit of confidence. Good afternoon everyone, I'm your pilot Reggie, and looking after you in the cabin today will be Reggie and his very able team of Reggie and Reggie. Your safety and comfort are their main priorities, so please sit back, relax and have a very pleasant journey. So Rhodes Airport is officially named Diagoras Airport after the Greek boxer Diagoras of Rhodes. He was one of the most successful athletes of his time, that time being the 5th century. Included a win in the Olympic boxing. His sons Damascus, Akuzilas and Darius also became Olympic champions, while 2 grandsons also won Olympic boxing titles. I think sporting prowess often does pass down the generations. There's not that much in my family. He's celebrated in an Olympian ode. But do thou, O Father Zeus, who holdest sway on the mountain ridges of Atabyrios, glorify the accustomed Olympian winner's hymn, and the man who hath done valiantly with his fists. Give him honour at the hands of citizens and of strangers, for he walketh in the straight way that abhorreth insolence, having learnt well the lessons his true soul hath taught him. I think this is saying he was good with his fists, but also very sporting. Unlike some sports people you could mention. An ode is a poem that celebrates something or reflects on or addresses something. Could be a person, a place, or an object. The word comes from the Greek ode, meaning song. Keats wrote one about a Grecian urn. Cold, pastoral, when old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours. A friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. Wise words. He also wrote one to a nightingale. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and leafwoods had sunk. Which actually pretty well sums up how I've been feeling this week. But I think the point of that ode is that the bird keeps singing across time and generations. Not the same bird, of course, but the song is the same. The beauty of it is the same. The bird doesn't know who it's singing to, who is listening, or the effects the song is having on the listener. It just sings. The world doesn't stop just because we are suffering or we're feeling ill. Birds still sing. The tide still comes in and out. Away, away, for I will fly to thee. I think there's a wind streaks on the surface of the sea. Or I'm still feeling ill and getting visual disturbance. Patterns are caused by variations in wind speed, or affected by what's underneath, and the surface of the sea becomes like a map of invisible forces, wind, currents, differences in temperature and speed, what the landscape is under the surface, maybe shipwrecks or fish shoals. Da Vinci said, "The earth has a spirit of growth. Its flesh is the soil, its bones are the successive strata of the rocks, its breathing is the ebb and flow of the sea." Alexander found me snoozing in Hippocrates Square. It was late. I'd sat in a corner, propped against the wall, to gather my strength, ready to try to find some cheap accommodation, but I must have nodded off, and suddenly it was late, and rather than feeling refreshed, I felt more drained. Standing up felt like a challenge. I thought maybe I could snooze there in the dust of the square with the heat of the night to keep me comfortable. If I was picked up for vagrancy, then either that would force me to find a place to stay and the police could maybe point me somewhere to go, or I'd have a cheap night in the cell. I was wishing I'd just made a bed here in the back of Sylvia. I may do that if I make it to Konya tonight. When I make it to Konya. I must have drifted off again because I jumped when soft fingers touched the back of my hand. A tanned 30-something guy with black curly hair was crouched down in front of me, light linen shirt and a small gold crucifix swaying from his neck. You okay, buddy? He asked. Do you need any help? I was so shocked I could have cried. I nearly did. I tried saying I was fine, but he didn't accept any excuses. Do you need a bed for the night? I have a spare room. No, I'm fine, thank you. I have money. I'm not a vagrant. I just need somewhere cheap, and I don't know where to look. That's okay. Let me grab your bag. I can show you somewhere fairly close on a back street. It's where my college buddies stayed when they came over from my stag. He hoisted my bag and held out his hand to help me up. You're travelling light, he remarked. Yeah, the rest is in my plane. Your plane? You're a pilot? She's only small, one propeller. Sylvia. It's just her and me. You've flown here from England? That's right. That's a long way. Well, not in all go. At the time, one go. I've got in from Athens this evening, just flown from there. Well, no wonder you're tired. Have you eaten? Yes, thank you. I got a gyro as soon as I got off the bus. Okay, well, the place is just round the corner. My buddy said it's basic but clean. The food's good if you want it. Thank you. I can help you check in. I don't know how good their English is in this place. Yours is very good. I did some of my training in the States. That makes sense. We are heading towards Marmaris now. The Church of St. John on Rhodes was destroyed in 1856 when a bolt of lightning ignited a long-forgotten store of gunpowder that dated back to the siege of Suleiman the Magnificent. It was a fear of lightning strikes activating the thermal batteries of obsolete Jupiter missiles, alongside worrying leaks of tritium deuterium in their nuclear warheads, that encouraged Kennedy to withdraw missiles from 5 sites in northwestern Turkey, all part of a secret trade-off with Khrushchev, following his withdrawal of Soviet missiles, de-escalating the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev said, "Any fool can start a war, but once they have, even the wisest person is helpless to stop it. A coward steps back down, but it takes bravery to step back." Admiral Nelson stepped neither back nor down. There are claims that his fleet of 13 or 14 ships was harboured off Marmaris, which is just in front of us down there. I mean, that would make sense strategically. Alexandria is just, 400 miles due south of here. No islands in the way. I've not been able to substantiate this claim, but I like to believe it. It's less military frigates down there now and more pleasure yachts. They build them round here somewhere. Water is beautiful down there. Inviting. But you do have to be careful swimming on the sea when you're on holiday. It's easy to be having fun one minute, then be carried far out to sea the next. Currents and riptides are hidden dangers, particularly if you've never swum in a place before. One of the most terrible things you hear is of someone who's drowned trying to save someone else who was in trouble, and then someone else in turn drowning trying to save them, strangers or family. Occasionally you hear that the original swimmer in distress becomes the only one to survive. That must be very difficult to live with. Alexander took me to the hotel, negotiated things with the receptionist, who was warm with him and disapproving when glancing with me. I looked a mess. I can understand why she might have been a bit suspicious. Alexander's kind offer had forced my hand, and as a result the hotel was more than I'd wanted to pay, and definitely more than my paltry wad of remaining euros would cover, so I proffered my credit card. I'd not considered using it since my 2 other cards were swallowed up in Paris, never to be seen again. Now I didn't have a choice. The receptionist entered the price, turned the terminal to me. I tapped my card. Beep. No good. I inserted it, entered my PIN. Beep. Fail. While I was considering if I'd entered the wrong PIN, the receptionist reclaimed the terminal, plucked out my card, and with an improbably large pair of scissors, briskly snipped it into angular shards. So tiny, there was never going to be any hope of recreating that. Wait, what are you doing? There was an exchange between the receptionist and my buddy. She says it's standard procedure in these circumstances. I really don't think it is. I mean, I think they're supposed to say, would you like to try again? Or do you have another card? Not instantly chop the thing up. Do you have another card? No. Then you need a spare room for the night. The word hospitality derives from the Latin word hospes, which combines the concept of host and guest. The Hospitallers started off as Benedictine monks based in Jerusalem. They provided hospitality to pilgrims in their monastery, which was dedicated to John the Baptist. As many of the pilgrims arrived with physical complaints resulting from their long, punishing journeys, the monks started to treat them. A hospital emerged from their hospitality. Then, in a brand extension similar to that affected by the AA when they moved from just fixing your car to trying to insure it as well, some of the monks started offering armed protection to the pilgrims, escorting them round the Holy Land, presumably hoping to have to patch fewer of them up. Thus they became known as the Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. After Saladin drove the Hospitallers, along with most Christians, out of the Levant, they moved to Cyprus. Growing fed up of being guests there and complicated politics that entailed, they decided they needed their own place, and they chose Rhodes. This was a smart idea with only one major drawback. The island was already part of the Byzantine Empire. While most of the island was quickly captured with bodice force, they then had to conduct a 4-year-long siege before capturing the city of Rhodes. It turns out it's quite tricky to lay siege to a port. The Hospitallers quickly made themselves at home, building a magnificent castle in Rhodes worthy of their great military and political influence. It's right by the harbour, on the site of the old temple to Helios, probably where the Colossus once stood. Follows the tradition of religious sites being stacked one on top of the other as cultures change. Costs about 25 euros to get in, and I'm not here for sightseeing, so I skipped it. Alexander was proving hospitable enough for my needs. Turkey Jez Lake is over there on our left. From up here it looks like a bit of the sea has been blocked off by land. In fact, I think it probably has silted up at one point. The channel, though, lets water flow out to the Mediterranean. It's 60 metres deep, a rich hunting ground for local fishermen. And down below us is the ancient city of Kaunas. There's a theatre, Roman baths, temples, town square. There was once a busy harbour, but it's silted up. Now the voices of merchants, sailors and fishermen have been replaced by tourists and people making travel documentaries or adverts for the Turkey Tourist Board. Somewhere down there, carved into a limestone cliff, are tombs from the 4th century BC. The fronts are made to look like temples or posh villas. I imagine you have to be someone pretty special to get a spot up here, above the landscape, looking down on what you had helped to create and what you've left behind. A permanent home for the dead. Down there is also Turtle Beach, a major nesting place for the caretta, the loggerhead sea turtle, which are apparently increasingly becoming endangered. I remember watching David Attenborough do a programme on them when I was a kid. I don't think he was a national treasure then quite, and I don't think it was this beach. Anyway, every summer, females emerge at night to dig nests above the tide, laying around 80 to 120 eggs, and then they return to the sea. After about 2 months, the hatchlings emerge at night. Instinctively, they head for the brightest horizon, usually the moonlight reflecting off the sea. Only around 1 in 1,000 survive, but if they do, they can live 50 years or more. Same age as me. Amazingly, female loggerheads often come back to nest on the same stretch of sand where they hatched out 20, 30 years earlier, somehow managing to navigate across entire seas using the Earth's magnetic field as a map. There's a river down there that I want to take a closer look at. It's the Dalaman River. Its ancient name was the Indus, not to confuse with the Indus. It's been flowing for millions of years. Down here, as it nears the sea, man has got a hold of it, but upstream, up there in those mountains where it spawned, it must be wilder, harder to tame as it cuts its way through the limestone. There's a lot of potential energy in that water, which is why they've built a hydroelectric power station. The dam helps to control the flow of water as it comes downhill through pipes. Then the Fast moving water hits turbine blades. The turbines are connected to generators which produce an electrical current. Transformers increase the voltage so that the electricity can travel efficiently over long distance lines to homes and businesses. It is, as Queen might say, kind of magic. The force that carved these valleys is putting lights on in homes hundreds of miles away. This impressive bit of civil engineering helps to control the flow and protect places from flooding. There we go, there's the hydroelectric station. Steady, Sylvia, sorry about that. I did some work once on the Norwig power station in Snowdonia. They call it Electric Mountain, which is a much better name. It's built on the site of old slate quarries and is used to top up the electricity supply whenever there's peak demand, when people put their kettles on at half time during a World Cup match or at the end of a particularly cliff-hanging episode of EastEnders. It's like a giant battery, I suppose. Water is stored in a reservoir high up, and then when power is needed, water from there is sent down through turbines into a lake below. Then it's pumped back up using off-peak electricity. It's funny to think about an electricity generating company having to use off-peak electricity to make it cheaper to generate their own electricity. Is that a vicious circle or a virtuous circle? Virtuous, surely. We took the kids to see it one year when we were on holiday, camping near Abu Dhabi it must have been. I told them I'd worked on it. I thought they'd be impressed, which they might have been when they thought I'd been one of the people blasting into the rock to create all the enormous tunnels and caverns. But when I told them I'd just gone in to do some checks about 15 years after it was opened, they were massively underwhelmed. They loved the slate caverns nearby though. They got to go underground and wear a miner's helmet with a torch. They both bought slate pencils from the shop. We picked up bits of slates from the roadside for them to draw on. I told them that this was the prototype for the Etch-a-Sketch, that you could draw something, then wipe it off with a wet cloth and start again. The Etch-a-Sketch was actually invented by a French electrician. He called it l'écran magique, which is a much better name. I never had one, but my cousin did. I hadn't realised as a kid that it sort of works by subtraction, not addition. You're removing, not drawing onto. The stylus takes away a coating of aluminium powder from the screen, and that's what makes the lines appear. Then you shake it, start again. Shake it, and start again. I don't know if I'd want a big tomb like those back in Kaunas. I don't even know what I want on a headstone. Nothing too complicated. Not my life story. Who writes your epitaph? Is it you when you're alive and can choose the words that you want to be remembered by? Or is it the people you've left behind? They're the ones who'll have to read it. They're the ones who knew the real you, and maybe they're better at summing you up. I hope that I get he was a loving father and a faithful husband. I've tried to be those things, but I'm probably not the one to judge. Maybe I don't even want to be buried. Have a place that someone has to come to and remember you. And it would only be Izzy. Would it be fair on her to make a place that she had to visit, to stand over and look at, to keep tidy? We didn't do that for Sarah and Luke. We wanted them to be free, maybe, or we couldn't face the cold, hard reality of a graveyard, names and dates carved into stone. So they're up here with me. I haven't been able to let them go yet. Troy is over there to the right somewhere. An abandoned town once known as Levisi had a population of nearly 10,000, but after the Greco-Turkish War and the 1923 population exchange between Greece and Turkey, its people were forced to leave. Now it's a ghost town. Empty doorways, roofless houses, crumbling walls. Reminders of lives that once filled the streets. Communities set apart. Lovers separated. Parting is such sweet sorrow. The Hospitallers also got a major boost when Pope Clement V made one of their two major competitors in the Catholic army business, the Knights Templar, illegal. The order had lost power and purpose since the crusading business collapsed, and its army roaming freely across Europe made some monarchs a little bit anxious. In a familiar tactic of the time, accusations of blasphemy and corruption were launched at the whole organisation, and so Clement decreed in a papal bull, statement, not bovine, that the Templars should be disbanded and their wealth, mostly property, should be transferred to the Hospitallers. The bull is called a bull because that's roughly the word for a lead seal, and that is the Pope's seal attached to the document that gives it its authority. When the Turks evicted the Hospitallers from Rhodes, they fled further west, initially to Sicily and then to Malta. When Pope Clement, by now the seventh Clement, lent on the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V to give them the island and Malta in exchange for the one falcon per year, payable on All Saints' Day. Clearly Charles was a master of the art of the deal. Dashiell Hammett's comic strip, The Maltese Falcon, adds a fictional layer to this story, imagining that the original falcon was made of gold and jewels and went missing after it was intercepted by pirates on its way from the Knights Hospitaller to Charles V. Dan Brown pulled a similar trick 70 years after Hammett, repurposing Knights Templar law for his Da Vinci Code. That sold over 80 million copies. Only J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix has sold more. There was no Holy Order of the Phoenix. The book only plunders other literary traditions, so I believe. I've not read it. It's a kid's book, and I'm an adult who, as I keep repeating, doesn't do fantasy. Actually, maybe I do have something against Harry Potter. I mean, isn't he just a capitalist patsy? His story, as someone who comes from outside the system into a world of privilege, goes on to triumph. That surely just excuses the inequitable system. It distracts people from wanting to change the system. Well, if Harry can do it, anyone can do it. We just need more scholarships to Hogwarts. Shouldn't everyone have the chance to go to wizard school? How wizard to go to wizard school. It's a long way down. I'm not sure where I put those sick bags. Talking Bull, we are flying over the western Taurus Mountains, which might come from the ancient Greek for bull, or the name might come from an earlier word meaning mountain, which would mean that these are the mountains, like the River Avon back home, Afon being Welsh for river, so making that the river. Taurus Mountains have been described as the Alps of the East. You can see why. Probably good for skiing and mountaineering if you're into that kind of thing. I suspect that farmers and shepherds were climbing and working these peaks long before people showing off the latest bit of kit, dressed in overpriced, over-colourful ski wear. I heard a phrase once describing someone dressed in way too colourful clothes as being dressed like an Australian's nightmare. Not quite sure the origin of that phrase, but I do occasionally use it if I'm feeling visually offended by someone's clothing choice. Not that I'm really in a position to be critical of anyone's appearance. An Australian's nightmare, though, works for me. I mean, that must be something pretty terrible. I also use the phrase like a cat at a fair. Use that quite a bit to describe someone who's fidgety or anxious or uneasy, which has definitely been me for the last couple of weeks. Looking over my shoulder, not sure where to go next, finding something to worry about around every corner. I suppose you class those phrases as idioms. Word idiom that comes from the same ancient Greek root as the word idiot. Idios meaning something personal or distinct. An idiot in ancient Greece was just a private citizen, someone who didn't hold public office or take part in political affairs, a layman. And over the years it gradually evolved to mean an uneducated person. And then soon every village had its own idiot. Maybe I'm becoming an idiot, in its old sense, opting out, and perhaps in its modern sense too. I think if I was looking at me doing what I'm doing now, I'd say I was an idiot. A blithering idiot. Ahead of us, I think, to the left, is Sogut. Sugut. Not quite sure how you say it, and can't really see it over these mountain peaks. It's means willow tree in Turkish, so they must have grown around here. They're a thirsty tree, the willow tree, drinking in hundreds of litres of water on hot summer's days. Back home, they weep, their branches bowed by grief for a lost loved one or a lover who didn't turn up at the appointed time. They weep, but they stay standing. Sogut was the base of the father of Osman I, Osman Ghazi. He was the founder of the Ottoman dynasty. In the late 13th century, it was a small frontier town which gradually expanded into one of the world's greatest empires, ruling cities like Istanbul, Thessaloniki, Belgrade, Cairo, Alexandria, Damascus, Aleppo, Beirut, Baghdad, Sarajevo, Budapest. Not much evidence of that from up here. And on the right is Kozagachi. That means walnut tree. A walnut bears a resemblance to the human brain. Two hemispheres, all those little folds. In the doctrine of signatures, an idea found in Greek, Roman, medieval and later herbal traditions, a plant's appearance is said to reveal its medicinal purpose. And although modern science poo-poos things like that, it turns out walnuts are actually good for you. They're rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants and vitamin E. Good for your heart and your brain. I try to eat a handful of walnuts every day, although I haven't had any with me on this trip. You're not really supposed to have walnuts on an aeroplane, are you? Just in case anyone is allergic. Is anyone allergic? No. It's just me up here, so maybe I could have brought walnuts with me. Alexander told me I needed to keep hydrated, so I normally hate drinking water. I can't really see the point, but he's a doctor, so I'm doing what he told me to do. Once I was in his flat, I started to feel even worse. Went straight to bed with a glass of cold water. Turns out that he is a doctor, and he raised an eyebrow at my temperature, and as he shook the mercury back down, prescribed at least 24 hours in bed. He checked my food preference, pulled the curtains, and left me listening to the distant sounds of Hippocrates Square and his preparations in the kitchen. Hippocrates started forming the idea of what it was to be a doctor 2,500 years ago. His belief that illness is a consequence of nature, not an act of the gods, led him to develop better treatments for the afflicted rather than better sacrifices to the afflicter. Deep down, on an animalistic level, walled off and detached from my rational, compassionate self, I suspect that I disagree with Hippocrates. I may secretly regard being ill as a curse, the result of moral failing. This position is, of course, nonsensical, irrational, and hypocritical. Many of my best friends, exemplary humans, far better and more honourable than me, are ill. But still, to me, illness is a weakness that I'm too stubborn, immature, and reckless to accept in myself. No one likes being ill, but I'm an illness denier. It has to really strike me down to get me to admit that anything is wrong. I've coordinated work lying in a blanket, shivering and sweating at the side of the action. In Frankfurt, with a crux moment approaching, Nikki and Silvio had to threaten to walk off the job in order to force me into my hotel bedroom out of their way while they work things out between them and the wider team. I spent the day sweating and shivering, listening to American Forces radio on the hotel's radio receiver. Now, I can't deny I'm ill. If I'm honest, I've been ill for a while. I've developed a hideous rash across my body, which is itchy. I've been sweating and I'm deep bone tired. Disentangling illness and tiredness is an impossible task. Illness incapacitates you, and fighting the illness takes energy. That night at Alexander's I was as bad as I can remember a fever. I couldn't imagine how it was ever going to stop. Down there is the D635 road, an engineering miracle, a good road for a James Bond chase. Higher up there's hairpin bends, blind summits, long climbs, white knuckle descents, long drops over the side, loose gravel, fallen boulders, lorries in the middle of the road, a coachload of school kids, motorbikes, stray goats, a shepherd and his sheep, dust, missing crash barriers, a slow climbing tractor, and then at the end a martini and a faded hotel bar looking out over the harbour. Yeah, that'd be nice. So there I was, shivering and sweating in Alexander's flat, a man who I had never met before, who'd rescued me from Hippocrates Square. "Trust me," Alexander said. "Trust me, I'm a doctor." I swear before my gods, my ancestors, my teachers, my fellow healers and apprentices, and by all the arts and knowledge I was privileged to learn, that I will stand by these words. I will love those who taught me these arts as I love my parents, and I will offer my skills to the young with the same generosity that they were given to me. I will never ask them for gold, but demand that they stand by this covenant in return. I also swear that if I earn fame and wealth, I will share it with my masters and my students. I will soothe the pain of anyone who needs my art, and if I don't know how, I will seek the counsel of my teachers. I will offer all those who suffer all my attention, my science and my love. Never will I betray them or risk their well-being to satisfy my vanity. I will not hurt my fellow, or put a knife to his flesh if I don't know how, or give him an herb to soothe his pain, even if he begs for it in anguish, if it might take away his breath. I will never harm my suffering friend, because life is sacred. From the tender fruit that he once was in his mother womb, to that first sigh he gave out between her legs when he opened his eyes to the world, I will try to understand his sorrows, but his secrets will never leave my ears. Under no circumstance I will use his body to advance my knowledge or my fame, unless in his last moment he or his widow give me his corpse, so that his death may help me understand how to soothe another's pain. I pray that the attention I give to those who put themselves in my hands be rewarded with happiness, and in honour of the knowledge I've received from my teachers, I swear to care for anyone who suffers, whether prince or slave. If I ever break this oath, let my gods take away my knowledge and my own health. Here speaks a citizen, a servant of people. May I be destroyed if I betray these words. Unlike these mountains, I am not a Taurus. I'm a Gemini, the twins, split personality we're supposed to be. I say we, Geminis are supposed to be. They're quick-witted, sociable, curious, but then not. Have another side. Whatever the opposite of quick-witted and sociable is. I mean, I don't believe in it, but you can always find something of yourself in those star sign descriptions. And I am quite adaptable. I am curious, and I do like having lots of things going on at the same time. And I probably never really settle on one thing. Jack of all trades, maybe, easily distracted by a different idea or a different activity. But I mean, you could probably say that about a lot of people, regardless of when they're born. But maybe there's some comfort in having your character traits explained, feeling like there's some reason for your behaviour beyond your own weaknesses, your selfishness, your self-absorption, your inability to communicate. The one minute you are the life and soul, the next stone cold silent. One part of me wants to go home. One part of me wants to keep moving. Alexander does some teaching at the Rhodes campus of the University of the Aegean. This doesn't make him a Rhodes scholar. Rhodes scholars are international students who win grants to study postgraduate courses at Oxford University, most famously Bill Clinton. It was established through a bursary bequeathed in the will of Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes had been sent to South Africa for his health, aged 16. While there, he started trading in diamonds, and with investment from the Rothschild family, he pretty much cornered the world market in diamonds and founded De Beers. Wealth from his business interests brought Rhodes power and influence. He became Prime Minister of the Cape of Good Hope and had Rhodesia named after him, both north and south. When North Rhodesia became Zambia, Southern Rhodesia was keen to drop Southern as surplus to requirements. But the British government said it wasn't up to them, thank you very much. Locals ignored this, and the whole thing only got fully resolved when the country claimed independence and called itself Zimbabwe. Cecil Rhodes was an ardent imperialist and racist, which the administrators of the Rhodes Trust nod towards whilst emphasising the great works and leadership of their scholars, including the filmmaker Terence Malick and the man whose YouTube channel presents classic literary texts acted out by Playmobil figures. Down there is Antalya, which was a Roman port. It's the 6th most popular tourist destination in the world, comfortably ahead of Paris. My surprise at this probably exposes my Eurocentrism. Barnabas and Paul of Tarsus stopped in Antalya, having come from Perga, and before going on to Antioch. They won't have counted as tourists, they were working as evangelists. Nice work if you can get it. Paul was learning how to be an apostle. Barnabas was teaching him. He'd only recently converted to Christianity. Famously, he was on the road to Damascus. The route from Damascus to Jerusalem classically entails taking the M1, a little bit of the M90, then Route 40. Because he was on foot, he would have gone directly through Amman rather than taking the bypass. Then he would have picked up Route 15, then the M5. There's an implication that the conversion happened when he was quite close to Damascus. It coined the phrase Damascene conversion. So I suspect this happened somewhere on the M5. It's probably a plaque somewhere. I mean, if this were in America, there'd be a huge roadside feature to celebrate the location. There's a photo from a road trip of us in front of a jolly green giant in Minnesota, and then earlier a giant stainless steel woman in South Dakota. That was a happy trip. Like I say, Antalya is very popular. 16 million tourists visit every year. On the edges of the city, beyond the historical sites and luxurious restaurants, are Gekikondu neighbourhoods. Means put up overnight. Cheap houses put up to house people moving from the countryside to the city to find work. People arriving with nothing and literally making a home for themselves. We've never visited. As I've said before, I'm not really a beach person, but I would have enjoyed the history. One of its major attractions is the Hadrian's Gate, which is inconveniently located if you're trying to get through Hadrian's Wall, because this one is in Antalya's Wall. It's claimed that the Queen of Sheba passed through Hadrian's Gate, but it would have been 1,000 years early for its opening. It was built to welcome the Emperor Hadrian when he visited the city in AD 130. He must have had a lovely visit. Beautiful sea views, a relaxing session in the baths, perhaps a night at the theatre, seeing a bit of Greek drama, one of the classics like Oedipus Rex or the Bacchae. 10,000 men possess 10,000 hopes. A few bear fruit in happiness, the others go awry. But he who garners day by day the good life, he is the happiest. The wall named after him in England marked the northern edge of the Roman Empire. It goes from Bowness-on-Solway in the east to Wallsend in the west, which could, I suppose, depending on your approach, be called Wall's Start. I don't know if there's a shop at the end, but if there is, you'd hope it's called Walmart, although I suspect that might attract some litigation. There was a shop near we lived once in Birmingham called Sainsbury's, a witty and presumably legal conflation of Safeways and Sainsbury's. Hadrian didn't visit his wall. There weren't so many attractions as down there, perhaps. Just legions of soldiers. Perhaps he didn't want to catch Legionnaire's disease, or pneumonia. We visited the wall one holiday when we were kids. The car kept overheating on the hills, so we always had to make sure we had a bottle of water with us to top up the radiator. You could see the wall, but everything else was mist and rain and wind. I did visit the Great Wall of China once. Our clients arranged a driver for us. It was weird being on something so famous. But maybe what was most weird was that it wasn't that weird. It looked exactly like I imagined, just with lots of people walking on it. I'm not sure if Cecil Rhodes would have given me much for this ring. I doubt they're from De Beers. In Athens, I'd gone to try and give Paula the rings back, Paula's ex-husband, the rings back that she'd sent me to give him, but there was no sign of him. The flat was disturbed, and I met two suspicious-looking strangers on the stairs. So I kept hold of the rings, and I lifted a photo of the pair of them from a sideboard, consulted a neighbour. He said that the ex-husband was probably in Aleppo, where he'd got family. I took the photo from its frame, and on the reverse I found the message, "To Paula and Abdul. Happy anniversary, next year in Cairo." The signature wasn't legible, but I recognised the squiggle. It was Nikki. This was confusing. How did Nikki know them? Paula hooked up with Leo after Nikki and I last worked in Bologna, and this photo predates that. This Abdul didn't look at all familiar. Until this trouble started, I thought I was in close touch with Nikki, that we shared what was happening in our lives out of friendship and out of genuine interest and curiosity, but he never mentioned either of them, or Athens, or Cairo, or Aleppo. I must be missing out on something. These aren't coincidences now. This is a pattern of events, surely. A very confusing pattern. But Nikki being missing, the money in the vault in Zurich being missing, meeting Paula in Bologna, Abdul being missing in Athens, it's like the plot of a book. They say the fez was designed without a brim to allow it to be worn in Muslim prayer when your forehead and nose, along with the palms of both hands, knees and toes, are supposed to touch the ground. Why not just remove the brim from the front of the fez and keep it around the side and the back? People used to wear straw hats with ribbons all the way around when playing baseball. Then the baseball cap was developed with a brim or a bill at the front. I once heard that wearing your baseball cap with the brim at the back is a countercultural shorthand designed to suggest that you've spent years in a penitentiary. When your loved ones visit you in those places, you have to face each other through a glass screen. I haven't got first-hand experience. Not yet, anyway. If you're wearing your baseball cap and want to have your face as close to the glass as possible, you need to spin the peak backwards. Another more innocent explanation is that if you're a catcher in a baseball game, and you have to reverse the peak in order to wear your protective mask. Personally, if I had to wear a hat, I would go with one with a curved brim. That real person going to the grocery store look. The grease monkey mechanic salt of the earth vibe. The Leonardo DiCaprio trying to move incognito through the airport lounge feel. I'm not very comfortable with the brand new, clean, crispy G flat brim wrapper look. My friend Stedman, he can pull off that look. He even leaves the stickers on. He can wear it. He's got a gold tooth, so that helps as well. I don't know what I'm going on about, to be honest. I very rarely wear a hat at all. People don't often much now anyway, do they? Unless it is a baseball cap or they're into Peaky Blinders. But look at a photo taken 100 years ago. Everyone's in a hat. They all look great, of course. I'm not sure what's changed. Maybe it's just no one was in a car back then, or the weather was worse, or maybe it's just the capricious nature of fashion. Anyway, I look pretty terrible in a hat. Except once I went to a fancy dress party dressed as a cardinal. The costume had the classic wide-brimmed red hat, like the one worn by Cardinal Wolsey. was a bit disappointed to see in the recent conclave that they don't seem to wear those anymore. They either go for a skull cap or a mitre. The wide-brimmed hat is good for tilting your head and hiding what you are thinking or trying to look sinister. Uncle Si, the arms dealer, he's a big fan of the hat, of course. He sports an array of them. They rotate according to season and occasion. His hatter of choice is Lock & Co. on St James's Street in London. The madness of the Mad Hatter in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland references the fact that hatters used mercuric nitrate to stiffen or to felt animal fur. The resultant fumes cause them neurological damage. As mad as a hatter or as brain damaged as a milliner. Though milliners specifically make women's hats and consider themselves more artists than hatters. The fez is made from felt. Felting wool uses water or needles to create the matting. Felting animal skin requires a process called carroting. It's the mercury that drives you mad. Tommy Cooper wore a fez, of course, only on stage. He was the son of an army recruiting sergeant, spent 7 years in the army himself. He was a desert rat with Montgomery in North Africa. He entertained other troops with his jokes and his magic. For one performance, he found he'd forgotten his prop hat, probably a top hat prop hat, and instead used a fez that he'd plucked from the head of a passing waiter. This got a big laugh, and from that moment the fez became his signature look. Laurel and Hardy, the fictional Laurel and Hardy, weren't desert rats but sons of the desert, years before the start of the Second World War. Their fictional fraternity, along with numerous real fraternities, has the fez as part of its uniform. When not appropriated by Western comedians, the fez was symbolic of the Muslim Ottoman Empire. This association meant that when Ataturk took power and started trying to turn the newly independent Republic of Turkey into a modern secular state, including improving women's rights, he outlawed the fez. Ataturk translates as Father of Turkey, which sounds like an extraordinary case of nominative determinism until you realise that he chose it as his name after he became Father of Turkey. He reasoned that a modern secular state needs to keep administrative track of its population, and that this is impossible to do if no one has a hereditary surname, so he insisted that everyone adopt one. These names had to be approved. There were numerous rules. You couldn't choose a name with a non-Turkish feel to it. You couldn't choose anything self-aggrandizing or that implied you had a particular status. Not clear how Father of the Turks cleared the non-self-aggrandizing bit of that. But there we go. Rules aren't always rules. And lastly, you weren't allowed to give yourself a ridiculous name, so no Boaty McBoatface. A hat tips over into being a fascinator when it becomes merely an ornamental headpiece, which presumably means when its sole function is to be decorative, not keep your head shaded, warm, dry or clear of rampaging bees. If I were a milliner, I'd be worried that calling them fascinators would be setting the bar unrealistically high. Philip Tracy's designed plenty that are extraordinary, spectacular and even beautiful. You'd have to have a pretty low fascination threshold not to be fascinated by any of those. I'd probably say the fascinator came of age as head-mounted phenomena at exactly the first time I became aware of them, which is when Princess Eugenie and Beatrice wore them to their cousin William's wedding. Of the two, I preferred Beatrice's, which was almost certainly inspired by Afrofuturist Sun Ra, as pictured on the cover of his seminal album Space is the Place, which I was thinking about just last week. I mean, realistically, I suppose I think about Sun Ra on average once a week, and Beatrice's Fascinator every 6 months or so. Sarah, I suppose you could say, had a range of fascinators as she was growing up, from ones that had animal ears so she could pretend to be a cat or a dog, to ones that had a look that a fairy godmother might have, complete with a wand, to ones more in the princess line with fake plastic jewels stuck on. They'd always come unstuck and get sucked up in the hoover. And then when she was a teenager, she moved on to flower crowns or headbands in 60s hippie style. I'm not sure if that's a headband, a crown, a fascinator or a garland. Izzy taught her how to make them out of daisies by making a little nick in the stem to thread flowers together into a chain. I haven't eaten much this week, but I'm starting to feel hungry now. The stomach is telling me that it would really like a fried breakfast. Sausage, black pudding, fried bread. But my brain is probably correctly telling me that that would be a really bad idea and that I should probably just have a slice of toast and a cup of tea. Britain's seen a long, slow demise in the greasy spoon caff. In the early 2000s, near our workshop, we had the legendary Snacks with an X, the Selly sausage in Selly Oak, the Warstone Cafe on Warstone Lane, on Caroline Street there was the one with less grease and one with more, which also shared its premises with a taxi dispatcher. Angels, that was nice, came and went. If you're out in Stetchford, the Silly sausage is still good, as is the Bourneville Cafe. Plenty of breakfast choices and classics like gammon and fish fingers. There was a brief period in which the Anatolia in Bearwood was my favourite. Then I don't know if there was a change of management or a form of religious awakening, but suddenly they stopped selling pork products, which stymied us on the bacon and pork sausage front, which, given perils of eating processed meats, is possibly no bad thing. But it has pushed me onto the Bear further down the high street. I don't think the Anatolia took to serving traditional Turkish coffee. First time I tried that was in Germany. I ended up with a mouthful of grounds, which was socially awkward. I think I just let it all run back out of my mouth into the mug and pretended all was fine and that I had plenty of experience in the field. There are a lot of Turks in Germany. That dates back to the Crusades, when German crusaders would bring back prisoners of war, or Booty-Türken, which translates as booty Turks, which is a doubly upsetting term. Goethe's mum was Turkish. I'm not sure if she was also Twerkish. The Ottomans laid siege to Vienna twice and left many of its citizens behind. Prussian kings employed Turkish soldiers, and the relationship continued into modern times, which you understand if you travel to any major German city. Parents of German international footballer Mesut Ozil were Turkish immigrants. His father worked as a miner, his mother was a cleaner. He helped Germany win the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. This was the first World Cup that Luke was really into. We bought the sticker book, which was probably more for me than him really. We didn't finish it, obviously, but I think we did send off for the stickers to complete the England page, even though they didn't even make it out of the Greek stages. We still have this and his other sticker books. He'd taken them with him when he moved out, so they weren't lost in the fire. We're over Anatolia now. Anatolia is sometimes called Asia Minor. There are different definitions. The easiest is that it's all of Turkey that's in Asia, i.e. everything east of the Bosphorus, i.e. almost all of Turkey. Almost all of the population of Turkey is Muslim. We might see minarets down below, pointing up amidst the mountain peaks. The easiest sign to spot that there is human life down there. Mosques as centres of life in villages scattered through the mountains, the call to prayer flowing through the valleys. I think that a good portion of religious law basically boils down to public health and safety information. Avoiding shellfish is sound advice, often. My mum wasn't Jewish, but she wouldn't touch a mussel, and it's taken me a while to pluck up the courage to eat them again. Avoid eating animals that are already dead when you find them. That makes a lot of sense. The sin of gluttony, well, that warns us of cardiovascular issues, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Washing yourself well and regularly is sensible. Not eating with the same hand with which you wipe your bum is especially important if you're not following the washing guidelines. Not working every day of the week saves you from exhaustion and burnout, and avoiding the perils of consanguinity by not procreating with your close relatives also makes a lot of sense. Rulings against pigs, though, are not quite so obvious. Pigs aren't good for herding, so the Mongols look down on the urban Chinese for keeping them. They aren't good in the desert because they eat supplies that could sustain humans. But then, a single pig can be sustained on scraps and slops. Poor people rearing their own pigs would gain a degree of self-sufficiency and autonomy which might worry authorities keen to control their people. Maybe this is the reason for the ban. Both my parents' families kept a couple of pigs when they were children. They were fed on scraps and leftovers. The pigs, that is. Well, maybe my parents too. One day the pig slaughterer would come round on his bike to dispatch the animal. This provided the family with meat for much of the year. If they had too much, it was shared around the village. This was during and after the Second World War, and they did live in the countryside. Once rationing was over, I think there was less of this. Although I did have a friend who was fairly recently in a pig club, where he bought a share of a pig, then received a portion of the meat. Pig eating slops encourages some people maybe to think that their meat is unhealthy, but this argument doesn't stand up to scrutiny, as other meats poorly cooked can also cause illness. Mary Douglas suggested that a cloven-hoofed animal that doesn't chew the cud is so abhorrent to the Israelite taxonomy of animals that they banned it. But others argue that it was because pigs were forbidden that the taxonomy was created that isolated them. If Judaism and Islam ban pork, why not the other religion of the book, Christianity? The answer could be simple. The Romans were early adopters and proponents for Christianity, and the Romans were massive fans of the pig, which is perhaps why this is the only one of the three religions of the book which is relaxed and about having a bacon sandwich. I saw nothing of Rhodes. I spent the week in bed. My skin felt as if it were alive and on fire, ants swarming under the surface. I couldn't find a comfortable position in bed front or side or back, pillows this way and that, everything soaking in sweat, my throat's burning, my clothes irritated me and the bed sheets oppressed me. I thought I was going to die. I would have, probably, 100 or so years ago. Time seemed to slow down. The sun and the shadows moved so slowly across the window. I was praying for the relief of sleep. But then my sleep was full of exhausting nightmares. I land at JFK, New York for the first time, as if I've never been to the city before. Somewhere there in the terminal, for some ill-defined reason, I find myself attempting to beat someone to death. But despite all my efforts, they won't die. I'm weeping with frustration, scared and exhausted, with a body that refuses to become a corpse. I don't know what it means, but it's made me scared of sleep. I've been losing weight. I feel as if my clothes are hanging off me. I feel old, as if my days of this life are slipping away from me. That's why I'm back up here. I'm not passive, I'm purposeful. I feel I've got some small control over my fate. I will not lie in bed and resign myself to any fate. I'll force myself on. There's only one blessing. I'm glad Izzy can't see me like this. She nursed me through a week of fevers once. We'd only just met. Not sure she'd have the patience now. And I'm not who I was then. My friends asked how long I'm going to speak like this. They think I'm an old man ranting on. They say God's judgment can't be wrong, that he doesn't perpetrate injustice. So my children must have deserved what happened to them. They're victims of their own actions. My friends said, if I am true to God, if I pray, if I am pure and upright, then God will be good to me. Good things will happen for me. They might start small, but later these good things will grow and grow. My friend said I should study history because our perspective is too short. We're of yesterday and know nothing because our days on earth are but a fleeting shadow. My friend said older generations will teach me. They'll teach me from their hearts. My friends speak in riddles. They asked if rushes can grow where there isn't a marsh, if reeds can flourish without water. They observe that while reeds are in flower, they are not ready to be cut, and that they wither earlier than any green plant. And I said, what are you talking about? They replied, this is the fate of those who forget God. Their hope dies, their confidence is gossamer, the ground beneath their feet a spider's web. They lean on a house and it falls. They clutch for it and it crumbles. They said hypocrites are like lush plants that push shoots out over the garden in the sun, but their roots entwine with stones and hit a layer of rock. They said these plants are plucked from the ground with ease and thrown away. The earth disowns them and they are forgotten. New plants spring up in their place. When I insisted on going before I was better, Alexander gave me the name and address of a friend, a doctor in Beirut. He made me promise that if I'm not better in a few days, then I would seek her out. He explained that she was the top of their class at med school, that she was a true believer in their shared Hippocratic oath that I would be safe with her. He would call her and warn her to half expect me. I need to find Abdul first. Deliver these rings. So I'm going to go to Aleppo. We'll see how that works out and take things from there. Alexander gave me some food, an old Turkish phrase book and a fistful of Turkish lira. He's been the kindest, most helpful person of my trip so far. If I'd allowed myself to think about it when he was waving me off at the coach station, I could have allowed myself to cry. I feel very alone up here. Not very much sign of human life, except that road down there. Seems a long way from home. I'm on a long and narrow road. I walk day and night on a long, narrow road. That's where I've been. I'm going day and night. Never know what a state I'm in. I'm going day and night. I'm excited to be stopping in Konya. I'm a bit of a fan of the poet Rumi. Thought it would be great to visit his tomb. I'll go if I'm well enough, but maybe I need to go anyway, even if I'm not well enough. When you're not well enough, it's probably exactly the right time to go to Rumi's tomb. I think he can help. I think he can inspire me. I think the world is mysterious. Faith is mysterious. I'm very ecumenical. Who are we to judge? We should concentrate on being good people. Allow everything else to its own devices. Rumi urges us to rise above the letter of the law and concentrate on its spirit. All religions can point to sects that impose extremely strict codes on its adherents, codes which feel more like arbitrary social control rather than health and safety or care and compassion. Izzy tells tales of her school with teachers bringing rulers out to check lengths of skirts. At our school, the handbook hadn't been updated since the 60s, which meant there was strident legislation around the maximum width of the trouser leg, just at a time when we were all failing to persuade our mums to alter our uniform to make our trousers as narrow as possible. So I'm heading for Konya. It might appear like a mirage. Mirages aren't hallucinations. They're not tricks of the mind. They're phenomenon caused by light bending as it passes through layers of air at different temperatures. When the ground becomes very hot, the air just above it warms and becomes less dense. Light rays passing through these layers of colder and warmer air are refracted, creating the appearance of something that isn't actually there. If you're thirsty and you see a lake in the desert, you really want to believe that that lake is there. So now, I just have to find it. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us on episode 8 of Around the World. Next week, hopefully Reggie will be feeling better and he'll be on his way to Aleppo with the rings. Thank you again for joining us this evening. We'll be back same time next Monday, 7 o'clock. Flight from Konya to Aleppo. You can catch up on recent films on our Twitch channel, or you can catch up on all of them on our YouTube channel. A mere 14 hours of material to binge, which probably pretty useful now the World Cup has finished. Something to do of an evening. I mean, the nights are drawing in now, aren't they? So why not treat yourself to 7 episodes of Around the World. Thank you again for joining us. We will see you, I hope, next week. Thank you very much.